All right. So, uh, just a quick intro about Jess. As far as have studied about you on the internet, I think you're currently working with UNIM Insurance, yeah,
Yeah,
and the digital learning creator. So we would like to learn more about what you do, from your own words. Would you like to let us know what exactly are you doing and a little bit about your past and the different experiences that you've gathered?
sure. So right now, I'm a digital learning developer at UNIM. So that means that I'm authoring e-learnings, I'm creating videos. I actually just developed a tool for my team. It's our own branded color contrast analyzer using our brand colors just to be like, hey, based on the WCAG standards, these are the colors that you should use to meet like these levels of accessibility for a team that's not necessarily super familiar with that. And prior to this role, I was an instructional designer at Southern New Hampshire University, so doing some very similar work. I was also part of their accessibility council, so that was cool because throughout the university, they were tying people from all different parts, both on campus and digitally, to kind of talk about creating that culture of accessibility at Southern New Hampshire. And prior to that, I was the accommodations coordinator at the University of Southern Maine. So I implemented a bunch of different accommodations for students, ranging from tests, bringing adaptive furniture to different classrooms, and even sometimes remediating digital materials, including things like breaking apart PDFs and manually enlarging them. So kind of have run the gamut there.
Oh wow, that's impressive. I think a lot of your experience has been a part of physical, getting things accessible to people with. Have you worked with children with disabilities and with special needs?
A bit. That's more wearing like a social work hat, but not so much necessarily in the realm of doing accommodations and whatnot.
Okay, okay. And how's your current engagement going on? So, are you designing interfaces for UNAM or the content that you're creating?
Mostly just online trainings.
Huh.
So a lot of it has just been talking with team members about, okay, what are some things we can do from a user experience
Mm-hmm.
perspective, just to make sure that it's not only accessible, but also allows people to engage with the materials in multiple ways. So something that I'm currently trying to get more traction on and something that I've done at Southern New Hampshire is videos, including both captions, accurately done captions, of course, as well as a transcript. And some people are like, then why am I making a video if some people are just going to read it? I'm like, it's not about that. Let people choose how they want to engage because, yes, it's accessible, but it's also going to be something that people get to choose their own adventure for what works best for them.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, uh, how do you plan a given activity? Do you have a roadmap for accessibility? Because you work from the accessibility point of view, if I understand, or do you look at it from a universal design point of view?
Most of the time these days, it's interesting because it's switched kind of back and forth. I would say with my current role, it's definitely more of a universal design, but of
Uh,
course, accessibility has a huge part there.
mhm.
And of course, if you're allowing people to engage with multiple ways, the same information, of course, accessibility has to be baked in there. But my former boss had a really good point about this. And she's like, listen, universal design isn't going to take away the need for one-on-one accommodations. Like you can try to meet everyone's needs, but on the same hand, what if you get something where, maybe it doesn't fit within the standard mold? You have to know how to make it accessible for that particular person. And a few good examples I have are of trying to remediate a training for someone who is blind and using a screen reader.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, in some of our authoring tools, we can set the right focus order and storyline. We can make sure that we're tabbing through everything and it's picking things up. But of course, because we don't have the exact same computer setup, we don't have the exact same software, it wasn't working. So at that point, what we decided to do was simply put the information into a Word document. And it's like, is it great? No, I would love to figure out a better way to do it for this really complex interaction where we can't use some of the more sophisticated testing tools. But on the same hand, in that moment for something that was really pressing and time sensitive, that person got the information that they needed in a way that would actually work for them. So always a balance.
Yeah, that's true.
Very nice.
Yeah. So, what have you worked with any tools specifically? Have you used any tools?
Mostly, a lot of them have been honestly web-based, simply because with a lot of the authoring tools that I use, we're not necessarily coding from scratch. So
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of, well, things like Wave aren't necessarily going to be accessible, but definitely, the WebAN contrast analyzer, as well as their alt text tools. When I
Mm-hmm.
used to a lot of different trainings to faculty members at the university, I was like, look at this great WebAIM thing on why effective alt text is useful, and also why a blank alt text tag might be the best thing instead of just having it repeat the same thing over and over again. And I mean, definitely in terms of what I do now, another good resource is definitely Grammarly as well as Hemingway,
Yeah.
because I do a lot of technical writing. So we're really aiming for that 8th grade level of
Mm.
literacy, just to make sure, we're not overwhelming people, as well as breaking it down into bullets. Again, it's keeping in mind things for people where reading isn't necessarily, like, visual information isn't necessarily their preferred method of reading or what works best
Yeah.
for them, but also it's just easier to scan for everyone. So I like to think that those things often play hand in hand, like what is going to be good for people with disabilities. Thinking about accessibility is often going to benefit everyone else as well.
Oh, that's interesting. That's really true for all the applications that we have today. So, is your experience based on web, more of building content on the web, or do you do mobile apps as well?
I would say more web.
More web, yeah.
Mhm. And
All
a
right.
lot of it is stuff where necessarily I'm not getting to go behind the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
but kind of creating the end product using the tools that are available.
And these are,
And
yeah, yes, please.
sorry, Younus, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dara. It's okay.
Okay, just wanted to ask us, how do you address your accessibility testing issues with your designers or whoever is setting the curriculum?
Right. So this has kind of been an ongoing process everywhere that I've worked. So a lot of it, kind of in the instructional designer hat, a lot of it is just doing the simple things like having different people tap through it and make sure that it's actually reading the way that we want it to, going through, and part of every single part of design work that I've ever done has been doing reviews on different people's materials. So a lot of it is just saying, hey, just so you know, having this matching interaction here, because, for example, with a program called like Articulate Rise or Storyline, their drag and drops just simply aren't accessible now. They know it's a problem, working on it. So we're like, okay, here's a way to do something similar, but where you don't have to worry about someone's hand movements. So you can do the same sort of activity without worrying about that. And a lot of it is also like manually leaving people comments on it. And whenever I have a question, simply because at some of the organizations I've worked at, we're not really allowed to download our own tools due to security concerns. A lot of us is using things like even Adobe's color contrast checker, just to be, okay, are my ratios right? Is this actually going to be accessible at the font size that it's going to be at? So it's been interesting for sure.
Definitely. And how do you receive your feedback usually? Is it from the end users or you have the set of testers who test the
Yeah.
improvements
So
or changes that's been made with your recommendations?
right. So a lot of it is just honestly peer feedback from my teams, and that's been consistent at both of the instructional design roles that I've had. But what's interesting is that when I was the accommodations coordinator, a lot of it was absolutely end user feedback. So an example I like to give with that is I had a student who was low vision. She
Mhm.
had a screen reader, didn't use it, didn't like it. And of course, everyone was like, oh, well, you're low vision. That means that you're going to automatically be someone who likes to listen to things, right?
Yeah.
And she wasn't. She's like, listen, I'm low vision, I'm a visual learner. And she also had some issues with color contrast, but they weren't kind of the ones that a lot of the simulators will have you test for. So a lot of it was simply being like, hey, I'm going to manually go into Adobe Acrobat, change some of the colors, rip out some of the illustrations, and based on what I knew about her, I would say, does this work for you? And kind of engaging in that interactive process to be like, I'm not gonna be like, okay, one size fits all, this should work for you. It was a lot of going back and forth.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is this something that you work with a team, or you are an independent consultant where you do it individually and then pass it on to the development team? How does it work at your end?
Yeah, so kind of for both instructional design roles I've had, it's been usually a team. So anywhere from a team of like 5 to my current team, I want to say has 12 people on it.
And is accessibility something that comes top down from, or is it like from the team to the management? Or is it a part of the roadmap, or is it something that you have to add towards the end?
It's a part of the roadmap. I think we're working to include it more.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly as part of our design process, we have it so that it's like, hey, as you're doing your different levels of reviews, because we'll do the UI UX review, we'll do a content management review, and in between those is an accessibility review.
Uh-huh.
And working on some processes on that, just on what exactly you should be looking for. Because designers, I've found, at least on the teams that I've worked on, it's not that people want to design something that's inaccessible from the start. They simply just don't know. And it's like, okay, here are the checklists of some of the big ones that you need to keep in mind as we go through this. So that's kind of the big stuff. But for some of these teams, it's like, hey, if you have questions, reach out to these 2 people,
Mm-hmm.
and they can
I really
guide you.
like that idea. Earlier, the better. The sooner we realize that this is not going to work, that is definitely going to be more cost effective and, of course, more user friendly too.
Yep. That's
Absolutely.
and when you mentioned checklist, is that derived from the WCAG checklist, or
I
is
mean,
it
definitely a work in progress, but yeah, I mean, a lot of it would be derived from WCAG and kind of cherry picked to be like, okay, here's what's most applicable with what we do, considering
okay?
that like you can't actually get into the coding guts of the different software we're using.
And what motivated you to do the Cpac exam? When did you give it? Give me something about it, as in what drove you into Cpac, and how was the experience with the exam and the learnings?
Absolutely. So I took that, I want to say in 2022,
Okay.
April. So it's been a little bit over a year. And I took it because, kind of building on my experience as the accommodations coordinator, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of this work is super personal to me. I have multiple family members with disabilities. My mom has cochlear implants, so seeing kind of firsthand how hard that can be sometimes. And I had some downtime at my instructional design job, and I knew I wanted to further my knowledge of accessibility. So I brought it up to my boss. Thankfully, at Southern New Hampshire University, we also had a lot of other people certified in Cpac.
Wow.
So had professional development funds
Mm.
allotted. So I talked to my boss. He was cool with it, and they purchased both the exam as well as some of the study materials. And I want to say DeQ University was the one that I usually relied on, of course. And yeah, spent about, I want to say about a month going
Mm-hmm.
through the materials, even things that I was like, I'm pretty familiar with this. I still took notes on it because you can always learn more, and it also helps you with your knowledge. And I don't think the exam itself was really that bad, but
Mm-hmm.
even some experience with physical accessibility. There were some questions on there where I'm like, I've just simply never thought about this
Yeah.
because it wouldn't have been applicable at a university setting. And I'm like, I'm never necessarily going to have to do anything that is strictly universal design,
Mm-hmm.
building, etc. Other than maybe, one time I think I helped my boss change out the door handles at a law building. Yeah, simply because we attached like some plastic things that would allow you to turn it rather than twist the entire knob. Just because
Mm-hmm.
the building was old and we had someone who's like, this is the accommodation I need. Other than that, no universal design experience with the physical stuff really. But so that was probably the most challenging part of the exam. I did enjoy learning as well about different countries' standards for
Yeah.
accessibility, so
Mm.
it was very cool.
That's true. That's
Just when we are talking about different country standards and all, have you ever had an opportunity to work on the curriculum which was set on multiple languages?
I have not, and then that is honestly something I would love to do.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
not yet, but definitely super interested in it. And a good example I have is in 2017. So right when I finished my social work degree, and right before I started the job as the accommodations coordinator, I lived in Armenia for 2.5 months.
Wow.
And yeah, so that was really cool. But even things like, okay, these sidewalks are a complete mess when it comes to, any sort of like even footing, etc. I was like, this would be so bad if you were in a wheelchair or used any sort of, you know, assistive device to help you move around, to the point where even walking around in some of the biggest cities, you wouldn't necessarily see people with disabilities, or at least physical disabilities, out and about. So that is something where I'm like, I know it's needed. I know that they have some centers, would love to help with stuff like that. So
Yeah,
That's so
interesting.
amazing. That's very interesting. Armenia, and so you were studying over there, or did you work over there?
so it was an internship.
Oh, okay.
I
Nice.
was interning at a bunch of different places, mostly working with kids. Um, yeah, teaching English, all of that good stuff. But, definitely too, it was eye-opening. And this isn't necessarily accessibility, but I think it ties into the family of it. For me, it was the first time where I was living in a country where, the first two languages are Armenian, Russian, then maybe English. Definitely in the capital city, not so much in the city where I was living in, even though it was the second biggest.
Yeah.
So it's really eye-opening to be living in a country where not everyone speaks the same language that I do. And
Yeah.
people sometimes are getting a little frustrated with me because my knowledge of the local language and the local culture isn't necessarily where it should be. So I hope it's super helpful and something I definitely try to keep in mind. And I also saw that play out a lot as an accommodations coordinator. So I'd have professors refer people who were learning English to my department, or people who are maybe had like passed all of like
Mm-hmm.
the like English as, you know, like teaching English to like language learners classes. They'd passed all of those. They were in English classes, but the professors were like, okay, this person might need more support with their writing. Then I'm like, that's not a disability. We need more resources to help these students without just being like, oh yeah, disability services. So
Yeah. So
yeah.
if we are using screen reader or voiceover, does that interfere with different languages?
Mm. I mean, I've definitely seen that pop up on different accessibility forums throughout the years, that it can. You have to be really intentional about what language a given material is in, but I've never experienced that myself.
Nice.
So, so when you mention yourself as a design, so what tools do you use to build interfaces, or are you majorly into content
Mostly content, honestly, at this point.
at this point? It is content. Okay.
Yep. I do know that a lot of the tools that we use are based off of JavaScript. So, for
Yeah.
example, speaking as a learning designer, kind of one of the big tools in our industry is articulate storyline. And that is based on JavaScript. So if you know JavaScript, you can go in there and do a lot of really cool things.
Yeah.
One of the more advanced features. But the other tool that we use is Articulate Rise. And these are just big industry standards things. And that is completely web-based, which is
Oh,
great,
yeah.
simply because you don't have to worry about, okay, like, is this going to load for the appropriate size for a given user? And I'm like, I love things that are web-based, because then it's like, if someone has style sheets or something involved, boom, like, it's going to load for in a way that's going to work. So
And you can swing it the way you want it, so that way it becomes more flexible. It makes it allows you to scale it, make it more bigger, as you want it. Yeah.
exactly.
Yep. So any experiences apart from the Armenian experience that you recall, where you had, you know tough time explaining accessibility to someone, or getting things accessible? Any experiences in the past?
So definitely, I would say it was an uphill battle even at the university itself
Yeah.
sometimes with
Mm-hmm.
accessibility, speaking very candidly. So many professors would of course be on board. They were like, hey, whatever you need to do to
Mm-hmm.
actually help students, I'm fine with. Like, if they need to take the exam at a different time because you have a testing center, okay, that's fine. We know that you're doing this as a service to both us and the students so that they can get their proper exam accommodations. So that's kind of a lot of what we did.
Right.
Or, meeting with professors kind of before the semester would start and be like, hey, there's a student in your class who's hard of hearing, or there's a student in your class who's low vision. Could I please have access to both your Brightspace course? So that was our LMS platform, learning management, and your syllabus ahead of time so we can request the materials in an accessible form, just because there's a lot of repositories of books. And also make sure that if it's a resource through a library, that it has captions. And if it doesn't, we can get that done. So like I said, most professors were totally on board with that. But there were some who really saw us asking for both the syllabus as well as their materials ahead of time as kind of us trying to control what they were teaching in classes. So that was
Mm-hmm.
very mentality, and I think that had to do with some campus politics.
Mm-hmm.
But and they were like, no, you don't need to look at it. It's fine. I've checked it out myself. And that was often the approach. Whereas, it's like, it's a partnership. I want to work with you and the students so that this is the best experience for the student before we're running into some of these issues. And
Correct.
like I said, a lot of that was totally cultural and based on like a lot of old stuff. But often that would get in the way of making sure that we were providing the best experience for our students who already felt like they had so much on their plates in terms of accessibility. They're like, I have to do so much more just to get my needs met than a lot of other students, just because it's not baked in from the start. And, that's why in the design world where I can actually influence things before they're fully baked, I really try to be like, let's think about this so we don't have to fix it later. And then have everyone be frustrated with the process.
Absolutely.
Very true.
And how many years did you do this with the university? How long were you with them?
Yeah, so I was there for almost 5 years.
Wow, that's
Or I think it was like, yeah, about 4 actually.
oh yeah. Okay.
But while I was there too, I also had the chance to work on like a web intranet rollout, right? So we were redesigning all of the web pages for my part of the university, and I was one of the leads. So of course that was great because I got to talk about web accessibility from the start with a bunch of these different places and make sure that we were at least having those conversations while we were also scaling things up, which was a
Yeah.
really cool opportunity. And like I said, so very different from how I was operating in the moment, especially at the start of the semester. Like right now, this school year literally started this week for my old university. So I'm just like remembering just how stressful that was for me as the accommodations coordinator, let alone all of the students who are also trying to be looking for like accessible textbooks or, trying to make sure that they had their accommodations letters and their accommodations in place for the upcoming year. So
Yeah. How do you stay updated with current accessibility standards and guidelines? Because it keeps changing.
exactly. I often refer to it as the Wild West, honestly, just because I feel like oftentimes I feel like there's a lot of really good accessibility content out there, but you often have to look. And then sometimes I've noticed at conferences, right? Like my introduction to this all was at Accessing Higher Ground. Have you heard of that conference?
No, not yet.
So that is particularly for higher education. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a group called Ahead.
Mm-hmm.
It was all of these different professionals from every layer of different universities, like even vendors, learning management system vendors like Blackboard, Brightspace, etc. They all go there and they talk about different accessibility features. What
Wow.
was taught that sometimes you'd walk in and you'd be like, oh, great, I'm going to learn how to do this really technical thing. And it would actually be a product demonstration. And you're like, I don't want to know how to use your product. I want to know how to do this in general.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's what I found to be kind of tricky about accessibility in general, although going there was really helpful because I actually attended an accessibility testing workshop with some of the folks from Accessibility Oz. Like I love them. I also like keeping tabs on people like Lydia XC Brown, etc. Certainly WebAIM as well, just keeping tabs on things. But yeah, I think there's definitely more of a need for all of us to be talking about what has actually worked in different organizations and how we're all going about it, because there's so much out there. There's a lot of duplicative information. And then it's like, okay, what does this actually look like in the real world? So,
Yeah, and if you have to incorporate those changes in your current curriculum, you would wait till next revamp, or you would want to introduce it right away?
oh, that's tough. So kind of at both places I worked at, there have been two different approaches. So at one, it was very much, hey, it's the summer, things are slower. We're going to revamp everything during the summer and make sure that they are actually up to accessibility guidelines. And that's one of the first things that I was tasked with when I started there. So
Mm-hmm.
that was really cool because we were actually going into our content without being asked to make sure that it was meeting our standards. And part of that too was just that we had less content overall to really be managing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in other organizations, it's a lot faster and it's more on an as needed basis simply because of bandwidth. I will say for everything new that we're designing, accessibility is baked into the process, but, kind of the thought is as you touch stuff, if there's not a request, make sure it's passing accessibility.
Yeah, because sometimes it is pretty intuitive and you want to have it, you want to use it for your end users. So yeah, I can imagine.
Absolutely. And I mean, it's been great. At my current company, everyone is very much invested and wants to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And we're having a lot of great conversations about what that looks like for us. And some exciting things is that we have, for example, a group that is simply for people with disabilities at our
Yeah.
organization. And I've met with some people, specifically someone who is low vision and someone who is hard of hearing, to talk about what their experiences were like going through our e-learnings and just starting that conversation. And especially within a bigger organization, we can also partner with people like the UX UI people who are actually hard coding our products,
Yeah.
looking forward to connecting with them more, as well as marketing, for example. So it's cool to see where that is. There's some online groups starting to have some of those conversations, not at the level necessarily yet of everyone getting together and like chatting about best practices and how we want that to go throughout the company.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done at other places and it's been exciting when it does. So
Yeah. So, what shift do you see in these years from the last 5 to 7 years in terms of, people accepting this as a change or accepting this as an improvement in their products? Have you seen any shift, or is it the same, or has it improved?
I think overall, I think it's improved. And I think, unfortunately, I think COVID really made a lot of people think about that
Yep.
simply because, even things like, I know some people have been asking for remote classes forever, right? Of course, in 2020, we all had to figure out how to do that really quickly. And obviously, super imperfect. Like everyone was kind of learning as they were going with that. But that's really changed a lot of things. And I think people are just more open minded and receptive. There's not just one way to do it, there's a lot of different ways. And again, it's kind of like, okay, what's going to be helpful for some people will probably be helpful for a lot more people than you might realize. Kind of like curb cuts.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's true. It's COVID actually worked as a catalyst to get a lot of things accessible because there were a lot of users who were not able to access basic content, and now you can say thanks to COVID we have so much content that is accessible, you know
Right.
and a lot of things have
Yeah.
changed. People see uh generation of UX UI now from a different perspective altogether. So yeah, so that's improving, and I feel so. Do you see the role of AI coming into this? Have you used any AI tools apart from GPT, of course, to to build anything that is accessible, or does GPT help you in creating any accessible content, for that matter?
I mean, I think not yet. I know that a lot of things are kind of in the works,
Yeah.
but I do know that a lot of people, including what I've seen too, are interested in this. And I think from an accessibility perspective, right? Like I'm thinking about people who might have, I know sometimes like I get really anxious when I have to write like a really intense email, right? what a great way to kind of at least have my email be read by something, even if it's not another person, and make sure that I'm hitting the tone that I want to hit, or even give me ideas of where to start with a tricky email. Again, I don't think that's what, AI is necessarily meant for, but it's helpful. It's an extra support. I'm also thinking about like different AI tools, like all the different mental health apps that have popped up over the past few years as well. What a good way to have AI tell you, like, hey, it sounds like maybe things are hard right now, rather than you keeping tabs on it yourself. I know that's really helpful too.
I think there's one app like that. I think I forgot the name. Is it Hive or
I mean, yeah, there's definitely Hive. I know there's
yeah.
been one with Penguin that you talk to. I think
Yeah.
um, just to kind of keep tabs on how you're doing, and or offer like different meditations and whatnot. That might
Meditation
be
techniques, yeah. I've used one of them and they turned out to be pretty interesting. They actually talk to you and, help you out at times, in their own way. It's interesting. It's nice. It's small little effort that the app does, but it's needed, it's the need of the hour. That's how it is.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, at least from my perspective, like accessibility is often like an overarching thing, but I'm like, no, I think it really plays into, you know, talking about like mental health, talking about things like cognitive load, right? So it's
Yeah.
like, okay,
Yeah,
let's think about this, and let's think about like all aspects of who our users are, and making sure that they're not totally frustrated by whatever it is that they're experiencing. It's
that's a
like,
very good point.
yeah.
Yeah. So Jessica, tell me one thing, if any organization who is in the early stage of incorporating accessibility, what points they should consider while building their strategic plan?
Yeah. So I think from the start, I think it's trying to make sure and get some buy-in that accessibility needs to be a pretty important early part of the design process. It can't just be tacked on later. And I think as well, making sure that people have enough time to test and iterate as they go along. Again, yes, having a product, or having an end goal is important, and I know that a lot of times people are like, we got to get this out now, without necessarily thinking about the other concerns. But it's like, okay, do you want to do this at first and have it take less time, less bandwidth, or do you want to fix it after and have it be way more stressful for all parties involved? If you're thinking about it at first, you can at least bake that into the process so it'll be smoother. I think those are some big things, as well as making sure as much as you can that you have buy-in from leadership, and if not from leadership, that you have some like-minded peers to at least hash things out with. I know that that's been helpful for me at both organizations, is to be like, hey, this is what I think is going to be most accessible. What are your thoughts? Am I coming at this the right way, or is there something else that I should be considering? Just having those thought partners is so important,
Yeah.
because you never want to be like, well, I think it's accessible, so therefore it is, or it passes this tool, so therefore it's going to work for everyone. Like, no, it's way more complicated than that.
That's very more complete. Automated accessibility is no accessibility. It's a myth, it's a legend, to have everything automatically built for accessibility. So yeah, automated tools do help. I don't deny that, but then yeah, you can't completely and totally rely on the
Yeah,
automated text.
very true. Jessica, did you ever feel any kind of resistance when you wanted to introduce any kind of changes for accessibility?
I would say the big ones, honestly, kind of in all different spheres, are mostly that people think it's automatically going to be a lot more work. And I mean, to be honest, if it wasn't part of the you're going to have to do a lot of remediation, and it's sometimes going to be labor intensive. Might be frustrating because things don't work the way that you want them to work, because you weren't having that conversation at the start. But then, when I actually show them, like, hey, making, let's say, a digital training accessible doesn't mean you only have to use black and white. You can, in fact, use color. And here are some, kind of like ones within our color palette that are
Right.
fun, different. I think people really warm up to the idea, because I think sometimes there's a thought that accessibility also limits creativity, where it's like, no, it's just different. There are different constraints. Like, let's play within the tools to make it so that we're creating the product we should be creating rather than, just ignoring it.
Yes, because eventually, for sure, it is going to elevate the digital experience
Yeah.
overall.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely.
And we also use a lot of accessibility features, which, like for example, captions on videos. We usually use it. We don't even realize that this is built for a wider audience. But now a lot of people, let's say with normal vision also, they are glued to captions. They are glued to features which are actually built for accessibility. So that makes, now a go-to thing for every designer, every developer, that okay, you got to build this because this is not only used by people with disabilities, but also with people without them. So yeah, it is being imbibed into each and every software development process. And yeah, that helps equally everyone. That's how it is.
Yes, and that definitely helps the people with temporary disability also. Like, if somebody has just gone through eye surgery or having trouble in hearing, yeah, this is kind of an ultimate solution for each problem that we face. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the number of times with like smartphones
Yeah.
where, I was telling people about, I think it might be called Read Aloud on different like Apple devices. And I
Yes.
was like, actually really easy if you have a remediated PDF to have it read out loud to you. And people were like, oh, this is great. So I can listen to my textbook while I'm
Yes.
like dishes or doing something else. And it's like, yeah, things like audiobooks aren't necessarily just for accessibility. It's like there's many different ways that you can use them. And it's great to have that option for a wider audience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So do you guys work in the agile setting? You huddle together as a team and do all of that? You do that on a day-to-day basis? That's great. That's interesting. And
Yeah, and I mean, we have chats too where people pose different questions. Sometimes it's like, hey, simply, do you like the look of this? Like, what do I need to consider? About design in general. But yeah, it's pretty collaborative. It's been fun.
wow.
That's so good to hear.
So
And
Yeah,
I think so. A lot of people and many organizations are moving in that direction, and they 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 are open to talk about it. That is a big change that I'm seeing in last 5 to 7 years.
yeah. No,
apart
it's
from the
it's.
compliances,
What'd you say?
I said apart from the compliances and the need to comply.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, I'm so happy that the needle is changing on that. Simply
Yeah.
because it's, I know I'm speaking to people who already know this, but it's like, okay, if we're just aiming for compliance, like that's not going to be an enjoyable experience
Yeah.
for anyone involved. Like it is the bare minimum.
Yeah. But that shift is coming. Yeah, like you said, the needle is shifting, and that's the approach that people have to take. It's not to be done because we need to comply, but it has to be done because it is the right thing to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I will say that's what's been really cool about kind of both all of the organizations I've worked for recently,
Yeah.
but things that I was not necessarily expecting in the corporate world where, you know, I was like, okay, are we going to be like pushed to be like, get this out as fast as possible? And no, like at least for me at my current role, like one of the big things that's baked in is simply like we want to do things because it's the right thing to do, it's the ethical thing to do, and it's going to bring us value in the future. So that's been really cool to see that common thread throughout both the
Wow.
nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but it's been great to see.
Yes.
Yeah, and when you know that each and every person has a right to get educated, I just feel very good that it is working so well in education domain, and people are willing and well, they are accepting changes. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think especially, just because everyone on my team has a passion for learning, that's kind of where we fall within the organization, is it within like the larger learning and development chain. Like we're all passionate about learning. We all know it's important. We've all been in settings where, getting talked at for 8 hours, like, doesn't work for us. I don't know who that works for, not many people, but so we're always kind of thirsty to kind of make things better and more efficient too. So
Yeah, and that's how you retain your customer base. That's how you retain your visitors. That's how you build a stronger foundation to bring in more users. that's what you said, earlier, like you're building it for the future. You can't build it for today, you can't build it for tomorrow. You need to understand what our users are looking for, and how can we make the experience better and better and better. And that's how you scale. That's how it is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. So I think we have asked you a lot of questions. It's almost 40 minutes that you have been answering. Do you have any questions for us?
I don't really think I have a ton of questions at this time. I know I owe you both feedback on the paper because I was like letting things percolate. So I will
Yeah.
send that
That's
probably.
okay. That's okay. We have actually revised it, and I think there were a few inputs from Dr. Newman. He is the head of accessibility from the University of Texas.
Oh,
And
cool. Okay.
he gave us some real good inputs, and we'll share you the revised paper. Good that you brought it up. So we'll share with you the revised paper. Maybe you can have a look at that, and see if that helps, or if there are any things that you can perhaps implement where you work or what you do, so that will be really helpful. And I
And
think from my experience talking to you, Jess, I feel that you have tremendous experience in this space. So would you be open to take a webinar for our audience? Maybe you can jot down a topic. You tell us a topic of your choice. And you are a teacher, so I think teaching is something that comes to you naturally. So would you take a topic maybe for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, whenever it is convenient for you in the next few weeks, so that we can publish it to our audience and get people visiting or listening to you, Is that something?
absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm actually going to be moving during the month of September, so probably October would be realistic for me. But
works for me. Yeah. So you can tell us a topic, whichever works for you. And maybe we can set up a time and a date. And perhaps if you could do a webinar, we'll be really grateful for that.
absolutely. No, I would
Yes.
love to do that.
Okay.
That would be amazing. You have so many stories to tell, and I think so. People will learn a lot from you. You do have tremendous amount of knowledge, and that would be a good time to, listen more in depth.
Absolutely. And are there webinars that I could listen to too to see kind of like what's been explored already?
Sure, we'll send you some links. Yeah.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, definitely, like I said, I think that this is a really important mission. I'm so excited that there are people who are out there and want to share their knowledge kind of across different
Yeah.
sectors and organizations because that's so important. And
Yeah.
especially in such a big audience, just to be like, okay, what's been working for you? I love it. Spaces like this are so important to me. So
Super. Thank you so much, Jess. Thank you for your time today.
thank
And
you.
And all the best with your move.
Thank
yeah,
you so much.
you're moving out of Maine, or you're still in Maine?
Still in Maine, literally moving just a mile down the road, but it's
Alright.
fast. I
How
wasn't
is the
necessarily
weather there, Jessica?
right now it's probably about 60 degrees Fahrenheit and cloudy, but there will be
Good.
days still very, very warm. But you can definitely tell that it's almost autumn here. Like some of the
Uh,
leaves are starting to turn, so
Yeah,
the 60 is
awesome.
good, I think, yeah, I think that is a good weather, good temperature to live in,
exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there have been times where like it's been 100 here over the summer. And of course, it's Maine. We don't have like air conditioners everywhere. Most of the time it's
Ah,
not warm. So, we're all like having fans. We're having like a tiny little AC that's not doing anything. And places that don't have great
100
ventilation.
is something that we are facing here in Kansas. Jess, I wouldn't mind coming there.
I think I have not been to Kansas, but I have been to Nebraska. And I think the one time I was there, it was also so hot. And, I've been lucky to live by the ocean for most of my life.
uh-huh.
So, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, what do we do? It's so hot. So I think we just ended up going to a pool because it was my roommate. That's how we dealt with it.
Yeah. Yes, yes.
That's nice. All right, Jess, I'll not take further time of yours. Thank you so much, and have a
Thank you.
great day ahead. Yeah.
You
We'll
too.
catch up soon again. Yeah, we really appreciate all the time that you gave us.
Of course.
Thanks so much, Jess.
Thank you. Take care. Bye bye.